Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of FitBody Lifestyle, and I'm here with, of course, my partner in crime, Miss Jamie D, love of my life, and I'm also here with somebody I love dearly, who is Mr. Drew Brannon. Drew, welcome to the show today.
Welcome.
Yes, finally my turn. I'm excited.
We've dodged us long enough.
We have.
I like being in full disclosure mode, so in complete transparency, we just all flew in from a show last night, and it was an interesting evening of not much rest, and we're getting ready for ramping up for shows today, so we are doing our best. I don't think it's going to affect the content, but if we say words that don't make sense,
or just a little
if we
delirious,
start talking in tongues or backwards or something, some foreign language that is just not even a legitimate language, so I just want to...
Or if we ramble on about nothing.
Like that, yeah, like I'm doing right now. Okay, that's what you meant. I got it. I get jokes. Okay. So Drew, let's start with this, which we do with every guest. Let's do a check-in word. And the check-in is just your intention, how you feel, anything that's come to mind right now.
It's the word I use a lot within this team, and it's honored. Honored to be here, honored to work alongside both of you, two of you, every weekend, even though the weekends get long and tired. But yes, honored. It's my...
Wow, that's a core value for both Jamie.
It's our number one core value for both of us, so you hit me in the heart with that one.
Well done, sir. So let's start with this, Drew. After the check-in word, actually, which was the start, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about me. So, raised in Florida my entire life, just recently located to Scottsdale, which has been an awesome change for both Jay and I. 4-year degree in exercise physiology at the University of South Florida, studied under some really cool professors and Bill Campbell and Dr. Ashley and some just really cool people that have had a great impact on me to this day. From there, Jay and I opened up the gym relatively quick out of college. Had no intention of being involved in the bodybuilding culture or lifestyle. I always thought it was just a bunch of big dudes that weren't actually strong, and we were power lifters. And so kind of fast forward to our first show in 2019 that we went and watched to, and it just changed both Jay and I's lives. So just a little bit about me, and just super passionate on education and evolving as a person, in every aspect of life. So those are kind of my crash course on me.
There's a couple things that let's fill in. First of all, Jordan Brannon is your husband. Is your
husband.
Is your wife. Well, we role reversal all the time.
That was one of those moments of the lack of sleep. Yeah.
Either that or it was Freudian in nature and more the truth. But
oh my God. God.
Honey, you're my husband at some point. So
wow. Okay.
Because you're in charge. But
I'm
anyway.
bossy. That's what he's trying to say.
The other thing, your gym is Pinellas Ultimate Strength House.
Yes, Push. Pinellas Ultimate Strength House, located in Seminole, Florida, a suburb of Tampa. So yeah, really, really small private gym. Try to keep it around 250 members. It's just been kind of a passion of Jordan and I's from the beginning, and just giving back to the community, and whether it's youth athletes or Parkinson's boxing program that we offer, just having a place that's welcoming for any demographic that wants to train, whether they're IFBB pros, national level, competitors, or just people that want to go in and have really nice equipment and a great contagious environment to train out of each and every day.
The last thing I wanted to hit on was, and we've just seen this evolve with you in a big way, which is, yes, coach, one of the best coaches in the industry. I know you would never put that label on yourself, but we can.
100%.
And I'm not saying that because we love you. I'm telling you that objectively. You are one of the best coaches in this industry. I don't believe there's a best coach. I mean, that's when you get into subjective analysis. But one of the best coaches. The other thing I would tell you is, and tell our audience, is that you're not just a coach. You're a coach slash educator. You're an educator slash coach. You're not just telling people what to do. You're very good at explaining the why. You're also very good at wanting to spread the knowledge. And it really keys into something we believe in, which is knowledge is not power, applied knowledge is power, and shared knowledge is ultimate power. And you really embody that shared knowledge mindset. So
yeah, and from day one, I'm the type that I could read a biology book cover to cover and want more. You give me American history. Sorry, Greg. I'm not getting past the cover, but that being said, with the opportunity you guys gave me to come out here and help grow the team from an educational standpoint and provide, accessible resources to our coaches and to continue to grow together, is why I think we are as successful as we are within the team and in the industry. So, sometimes it gets in my way because I always want to learn more and more and more and why, but that is definitely a huge part of me.
Yeah, and I mean, I that's one of the big reasons that we wanted to have you on and really talk about what your role is, because I know people are curious, like, how is this whole thing fitting together? And we came together to level up, and that's exactly what we've done, and that's been really exciting because it's that education piece, and because this is, I feel like in bodybuilding we know like the tiniest little bit of the iceberg of knowledge that's lying underneath. And I love your passion for learning and then being able to convey it in a way that others can learn. So that's been a huge focus for us. And it's been a lot of fun to dig in and help elevate our coaches to the next level and then continue to learn together ourselves. I love your curious mind and how you're constantly picking the brains of all of our top coaches in the industry. And I think that's something that we share, like that respect for, that we don't know everything, and that's huge.
Oh, 100%. And then, you're great at pulling me back, and, sometimes we can outcoach ourselves as coaches. And I think that's something we've really tried to preach to our coaches. And, it doesn't have to be the super long algorithm, of controlling every single little detail. At what point do we, stress the athlete out or overwhelm the athlete? Sometimes the best plan is a plan that an athlete can execute consistently, and I think I've learned that a lot from you, and not getting so hung up with just the minutia and every little controllable detail, because we always say, cortisol can be one of the, silent killers with an athlete's physique. So if we have this awesome program built out on paper that just stresses an athlete out, like, you're really good at controlling your athlete's mindset and keeping them calm and keeping them confident. I still have a ways to go on that side of things as a coach. So,
well, I think though that is our whole philosophy, is this teamwork sort of approach. Like, we bring different strengths together, and we work together, and really the product of all these Olympians that are going on stage this year is a collaboration effort between the three of us, which is really amazing. Like, we each bring something different to the table. I can't even imagine doing this without Papa Bear here. Boy, this last weekend, I'm like, this is a Papa Bear moment.
Yep. Because
this is a roller coaster ride. This gets me emotional because I so appreciate everything that you guys do. But this is a roller coaster ride. I mean, our athletes, especially, at the highest levels, they're on there's high or so high, and the lows can be pretty low. So as coaches, it's a challenge.
And they happen
to manage
fast. And that's the hard part, right? Is the volatility. And it's not just like this nice, easy, smooth curve. It's like here to here, right?
It's a jagged curve.
It's very, and it's tough as a coach, right? Because we're as invested with our athletes as they are, and we feel that. And, we had a fantastic weekend this weekend, as a team. It's just still, there was a lot of emotion that occurred. But I do think it's because we care, right? We care so much about our athletes. Our athletes are not numbers. We're not, Jamie, you're not coaching 400 athletes by yourself. Like, we keep our rosters very manageable, so every athlete gets the attention to detail. But then at the same time, like, we're still co-coaching a lot of these people. So, like, it's not like we're co-coaching 400, right? We're co-coaching like 100 people. So I think that's a huge part of why we are so successful. And like you said, I'd love to kind of dive deep in that with how this is working, because I know a lot of people have questions of, the training piece and the diet piece and who's running what aspects of some of our, top athletes, and how synergistic it is, with us, and how easy it is to work alongside each other.
I do think that's the word to key on, is synergistic, because I think our industry is dominated by a lot. It's an individual sport, we know. And I think a lot of coaching approaches, and this is not a criticism, it's an observation, they want to be the coach that makes the call. And I respect that. That's not our approach. Our approach is giving our athletes the benefit of different approaches to figure out what resonates best with them. And on a micro level, the best way I can illustrate it is we've been in a room, we've had 3, 4, 5 coaches in the room, and we're searching for that cue, that mental cue that resonates most with that client. If it was just one of us doing it, well, then it would be easy. But it's not easy, because everybody resonates with a little bit different approach. And so I always remark on, and just am impressed by the fact that one of us will come out with, okay, do this, and bingo, that's what resonates with the client. So our approach really is athlete first, in the sense of what gives the athlete the best experience. Not everybody likes to play on a team. So that's fine. Again, not a judgment, an observation. And we all get that thrill of knowing what an accomplishment can be made as a team. And I've said this for years, from the military to my other career, which is great accomplishments are not made by great individuals, they're made by great teams. And you think of every athlete getting on the stage, and they are the culmination of not just their own individual effort, but how is the family? How is the spouse, the boyfriend, the girlfriend? How are their friend group? How is the environment around them? Was it shaped in a way that was compelling, was inspirational, motivational? And I really think that's what we've captured. But Drew, we didn't capture that just because of Jamie and me. We captured it because people like Jordan and you and the rest of our coaches really have bought into that mindset and that concept of if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we want to go far. And maybe that's the foundation to kind of start talking about, how do we create the synergy? What's your role? How do you fit within that?
Yeah, I mean,
we'll start by talking about the education piece first.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. So, I think that's something, our coaches absolutely love. I love, you love doing it as well, as, our Tuesday Tuesday is our office hours. So, we have an hour dedicated to a Google Meet that any coaches can kind of pop in and out and ask Jamie and myself and other coaches on the team, questions, whether it's an athlete in peak week or an athlete 4-6 weeks out, and getting feedback with, do we need to be tighter? Are we ahead of schedule? Are we behind schedule? Whether it's a protocol or a training question. Something we've really been diving deep in is training footage review, and becoming very confident with assessing training footage and helping our athletes be better at training. And it's something that there's a gap there, right, with online coaching, because we're not there to physically cue and put people in what's an optimal position for them. But through training footage review, we can assess a lot. So those office hour calls have been great. The coaches that have been on those calls and interacting with those calls have continued to level up hand over fist, and just ask whatever questions they may have. And it might not even be relevant, to an athlete. It might just be, looking over blood work, down the road or whatever it might be. It's just really, really neat to have. And then on Wednesdays, we have our 90-minute continuing education calls. So similar idea, whether it's a case study we're working through or a specific, training principle or, supplement protocol, whatever it might be. Just really diving deep into the mechanism of action and what's happening, and then how does this apply, and is it applicable for our athletes in the bikini division, right? Because there's a lot of things that aren't really applicable for our bread and butter within the bikini division, but just continue to learn and elevate. It's just been it's fun for me as a coach to keep studying and keep learning and helping other coaches kind of level up.
Right. And one of the things I do love that we do on the educational calls is the breakdowns of the shows.
Right, yes.
Because, we're constantly, and that's one of the things that's been a lot of fun for the two of us to kind of pick things apart. Why are the judges picking this over this? How can we create more of what they're looking for? It's that constant. And then helping, our coaches continue to learn that. Then each of our coaches kind of brings in their different levels of specialties, whether it's certain coaches do maybe other divisions or have different backgrounds, or, have a specialty in, like with Jessica, prenatal, postnatal, or it's just everybody kind of brings in a different level. So it's been fun to kind of see how you're leading this educational group and then bringing everybody's strengths in as well. And then also studying the sport, because it is an ever evolving. Yeah.
And we have a huge, going back to the team aspect and, having, the depth of coaches that we have. There's weeks where I was in Masters Nationals and Greg was in Chicago, Jamie was in Vegas, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right. So we're able to divide and then, reconnect on that Wednesday call and do show recaps, right? We know we can look at photos and video, but obviously there's nothing better than the person that was on site there watching it live. So we're able to just compile all that data and just really, spread it between all of our coaches. So being able to divide and conquer is something that I think also gives us a substantial leg up on some of these, single coaches. They can't be at multiple pro shows at a weekend with a pro qualifier, on the same weekend. Like that was a massive weekend for us to kind of navigate through. And
right.
It was
and we got two Olympia qualifications and
7 pro cards or something like that. Right. So
I mean, not to brag, but it was a good weekend.
Humble.
Well, and I do think that the wins are great. The biggest thing I think that we got out of it, and this is really important, is that we measure our success. I mean, yes, everybody wants to win. Who doesn't want to win? Yeah. But we really measure our success by the experiences that our athletes have at the show, and especially the ones who don't win, because there can be only one winner. So what I believe is a tail end to what you're describing, and because we hear it from our athletes, is how well they felt taken care of regardless of how they finished. And they felt taken care of because we did have a presence for them. And there's not every show where we're going to have a physical presence. That's just impossible with as many shows as there are. But I will say that we are, I've seen this where on a Tuesday call, an office hours call, somebody will bring in an athlete and they'll tell the athlete, and the athlete's like, oh my God, I'm so glad, because they got 30 sets of eyes on whatever they're posing or their protocols. And if the coach cannot be there for the show, which happens a lot, or not happens a lot, it happens sometimes, that athlete gets the benefit of 30 coaches or 30 sets of eyes that are on them, and the coach who's coaching them virtually just has such a presence with them. And we've heard this. They just feel well taken care of, which is our goal.
And it helps when we're on site. So if
right.
Anne, we'll take Anne, for example, and Christine, she just turned pro at North Americans. And
Anne Lemus.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
I know I'm bad at that. But she had brought her up a few times, and by the time I was there able to see her and I was able to report back or the check-in, hey, does the athlete look the same in person as they do in the video? It's something Jamie and I have gotten really good at with not being at shows together, that when I check in an athlete, being able to communicate, here's the video that you're seeing, but I'm seeing glute striations when she's walking. I don't see them in the video, or whatever it might be. But when the coach is able to give context and what's happening leading into that peak week and things like that, and then the athlete knows, hey, go check in with Drew, Jamie, whoever's on site that weekend, it's just very synergistic, makes the athletes feel so comfortable. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is controlling controllables, right? So if we can have an athlete calm, they know their main coach may not be there, but there is a FitBody Fusion coach there that's going to take care of them, checking tan, hair, makeup, posing, all that stuff. It's super beneficial and something that we have a drastic leg up on.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think some people don't realize how quickly the body can change on show day. I've seen there's coaches out there that'll give a full peak week protocol before the peak week ever happens. And, that's the body's changing every single day. And then when we're at a show, it's changing hour by hour. And you and I have talked about an example that we had at North Americans where we had an athlete that was doing the over 40 and the over 35, came out in the over 40 and we're like, she's looking a little bit flat. You went in, you had her drink some water, you had her eat a little bit more. She came back out for the 35. She did not win her over 40, but she did win her over 35. That's the difference in the being on site. Or there's been times where, maybe somebody's not nailing their pose and we're able to run back, or their glaze has completely soaked in and they're dry up there. So one of us will run back there. And it's just, that's the thing that's, I feel like it's fun. It's challenging. We love strategy. We love, how do we get just even that little bit more out of this individual.
It's very competitive, right?
Yeah.
Like the national level, like it's, and the devils are in the detail, right? Like we just controlling our controllables, and we can control their glaze. And I mean, most of the time, sometimes in Pittsburgh, it gets tough with them in the back hallway being held for, you know, there are some shows, but we've learned, right? So we know when we go there, maybe we overglaze them a little bit, knowing they're going to stand in that back hallway for 20, 30 minutes before they hit the stage or whatever may happen, right? But we are always collecting data, and, you know, I know
and applying techniques.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Just, you know,
figuring out what works best. I did want to talk a little bit about, and I know that a lot of people are curious because they see all the tags with all of our Olympians, which it was funny because I actually, somebody had posted how many Olympia wins the Olympia qualifications we had this year, and I think he said 11, but I actually went back and it was 14. So that was 14 in the 2024 Olympia qualification. So not counting the one we got this past weekend because that's for 2025. But
and that's not 14 athletes. That is
14 total
wins.
Olympia
Wins.
wins. So you know, and I really do believe that, you know, we have really leveled up this year. And the big piece, and you kind of started to allude to it a little bit, and I want to go a little bit deeper into it though, is that, you know, when we're doing remote coaching, it is challenging to make sure that training piece is where we need it to be, and just some of the different details, that next level of details. So I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about this, because the people will see you're tagged in all the Olympians posted and things like that. And we are truly collaborating and working together, and it works really well. We've gotten to where we can finish each other's sentence or just look at each other. We don't even have to say the word. So
my favorite's when we both pause because we're waiting for the other person to say what we're thinking.
and then we look at each other, we just nod.
Yes.
Yeah. If people could see us on a weekend, and I mean, just if we could, I almost feel like we need a B-roll about that. But we mostly these two are just finishing each other's sentences, thinking the same thought. They'll turn to each other, and one will say the word, and the other will say, "Well, that was in my head." And I mean, Drew and I this weekend were like, I would say something, it was just something he was about to say, and so, and I would say it this way: is that it's not because we are groupthink minded. It's honestly, we're looking at things a little bit differently and coming to that conclusion, but we come to that end state very in our own way, but it's the same end state, is what I would say. And there's times when we disagree about stuff.
And I think that's one of the coolest things. Like when we do disagree, we all take a deep breath and have a conversation about it, and like make our case, and then like, nope, you're right. I see that now. And like, that's something I was super in my head earlier this year when moving out here. I'm like, I mean, I still fanboy over, you know, Jamie, but you know,
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
here I am. I guess this will kind of work leading right into what we're going to talk about with like the training evals. But like early in this year, you know, we're having the athletes come out, and the day one, basically we're posing them, just looking structurally what's going on, you know, posing tweaks. I'm really assessing like movement patterns when they're posing, things they're struggling with, whether it's thoracic rotation or opening a hip or opening lats, whatever the case might be for that athlete. But earlier on in the year, I was like, I'm sitting here next to Jamie DeBernard, and I'm looking at Amy Delgado, and I'm like, why am I here? Like, why? Like, and it was tough. It was really tough. And you guys were, you know, working with me and having that confidence to be alongside you guys and coach alongside of you. You know, I've only been doing people. I don't know if people realize this. I've really only been coaching since 2022. Junior USA's is when you guys offered to bring me on the team. And up until that point, I was only coaching like 10, 12 athletes out of my gym in Florida. So to go from 2019, bodybuilders are just a bunch of, you know, really weak, big dudes, not at all about it, to then 2022 going to work for the largest contest prep team in the US. Like, I don't know. So finally I got over it. But going back to the whole training eval. So we see them on, you know, that first night, pose them, kind of break down their posing, where they head, what are their strong features in their physique, and then kind of where they're lagging. From there, I take them and we do an eval, so like a movement screening eval. So it's a few different things we're assessing, really looking at the hips and mobility of the hips, mobility of the middle spine, and then active versus dynamic range of motion stuff is huge for the girls right now. We tell them to pose both sides, but we know they don't pose both sides. So
most don't. Yeah.
Or they'll pose one side 90% of the time and the other 10% of the time. And then they'll tell us, yeah,
which
I
causes
both sides.
and this causes a lot of issues.
A ton of imbalances. And we've got, I think we've done like 75, 78 assessments year to date up until this point in person. So we have some really good data across the bikini division, and the main dysfunctions, if you will, of a bikini competitor that most women have. At least one, most of them have two, if not three, of these dysfunctions that we've kind of come up with. So then from there, I call it my ceiling fan time when I lay in bed that night, stare at the ceiling fan and think about everything that I've kind of processed through that eval, and then get to work on coming up with their prep and prime, which is basically their warm up that is specific to them and their needs based on the dysfunctions that they presented in that eval the night before. And then we go through like some of the meat and potato movements, whether it's the hinge, teaching girls how to properly hinge or how to properly thrust or squat mechanics, things like that. And then kind of send them on their way with their new training program. And then they're supposed to be sending training footage review for us to kind of stay on top of the execution aspect, because they might have the perfect plan, but if they're not executing it properly, then is it the perfect plan?
Which is this is, and so just to kind of pause you for a second, because like I think this was a huge revelation for me, and I feel like that was one of the biggest things, like with you coming on board with your background and really, function and movement and all these things, like being able to start to assess that. I feel like that's leveled us up so much because, I feel like my assumption as a coach was I'm giving a program and that program is being executed. And then when I'm not seeing the body change like, it should, I was like, okay, well, is this person just not pushing enough? Like what's going on? So then us kind of going to this next level where you're assessing that and we're going, oh, maybe it was a form issue. Maybe it was an intensity issue. Maybe it's, a movement. They can't even get into the position, so this exercise is not going to work for this person, period. So, I've learned so much from you. I know you say what you say, which I'm so honored, but truly, like I've learned so much from you, and it's been, I think it's kind of like, me helping you temper some of the like detail-oriented thinking, which I could be very detail-oriented too, but it's like kind of not overwhelming the athlete with all of that. Yeah. Right. And then like you bringing in that level of detail so that we can go, okay, why are we not getting that result from this person? Maybe they're so locked up, we need to send them for some body work, maybe there's something that needs to be added to their prep and prime. They need to be able to warm up a little bit better because they're just not they're just going in and it's not, they're not hitting the area we want to. I would just, the one example we see all the time is where the tie-ins aren't developing and the adductors are just getting
more and more developed.
Bigger and bigger, yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, they're just not doing the movement right.
Yeah, and I think opening the gym, so kind of backtracking back to about me, when I was in my undergrad at University of South Florida, it was part of some research, which was really cool to be on the research side of things and kind of to see now the gap in how some research is great, but how does it really apply? There is a gap, and I think a good coach can kind of manage that gap. But from there, I worked for my mother-in-law's physical therapy clinic. So I was like way clinical on the side of things and like really understanding like rehab and return to sport post-injury. And then from there, when we opened the gym, it was a lot of, ACL, meniscus rehab, total hips, total knees. So I had to understand biomechanics on a really deep level, then went into a lot of youth athlete development with high school athletes, eventually sending them off to, play D1, D2 sport, and then getting into bodybuilding. So when I also was doing like 60 hours a week of in-person training in my 20s. So I have a lot of hands-on experience within the training side of things and really had no experience training remote. So that's where it's been tough to manage for myself, but taking all those hours I've logged in person and getting cues and really understanding and assessing physiques through different, sports and movement patterns or injuries, I think has been a huge leg up in helping our athletes, really see change quick. And we see it all the time, like the girls that are executing their prep and primes and executing their training with proper intent, like you and I will do an assessment like, nope, we're shutting you down for the rest of the year. And then the athlete gets that program and is like, nah, I'm going to prove them wrong. Gets to work. And next thing you know, we're like 4 months later, like, nope, we're prepping, like, cause it's worked. Like it's done what it needs to do. So I just think that that's been a huge I didn't know it at the time when I was logging all those hours in person and, you know, studying what I was studying, from a functional movement, you know, screening analysis to pain-free performance specialties, CSCS, all those fun, you know, certs that I did in my younger years, like how they really apply to bodybuilding. And I know there's some different ways that different coaches and trainers like to go about bodybuilding, but I think for us, it's more about managing the tissue, managing waistline, being smart about what we're training and not pigeonholing a physique, because we're sure we might be able to grow glutes exponentially quicker, but at the sacrifice of what quad development or what midsection development and things like that. So really being specific with and intentful with what we're doing with our girls.
I said this to an athlete, and she put it in her story, but I've said this to a number of people, is that bikini training, and for the record, we don't just do bikini, but that's our core competency. We also train.
Turned several figure pros.
That's right.
Wellness.
So Drew has turned figure
wellness.
wellness. He's going to get a men's physique here at some point.
I already have men's physique.
Oh, that's right. Men's physique.
I need classic physique.
That's right. You need classic physique. I know you want to get one in every category. So I don't want people listening to think that we just do bikini. We have male coaches, Tommy Wynn, Gil DeVera, who do male athletes. So we do that, and we do it well. So it's not just a we do it, it's a we do it well. And the same philosophy that we apply to bikini, we carry over into these other areas. But there's two other points I want to make. One point is, for you to say that it was a revelation on your part, I really think is like maybe the understatement of the year, because I know you, and you're one of the best leaders I have ever been around in my life. And let's face it, I've been around some amazing leaders in the military. I've been around some amazing leaders in corporate America. You are still the best leader I know. And one of the things that I put in top leadership is you don't lead with ego. You lead with knowing, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is where I need, where I can be better if I surround myself with better people. And Drew, quite frankly, you're in that same boat, is that you guys know that I can be really good myself, but I can be super good if I get the right team. And that goes back to that team approach. So I just want to make sure the record's clear on that. You're still the best leader I know. Secondly, or thirdly, whatever I'm on, that we have talked a lot about this, is that, and honestly, it's as much of a mindset thing as a physical biomechanical thing, which is getting through to athletes that when you're training for this sport, bikini specifically, you are not training with a sledgehammer, you're training with a scalpel. And that means that the movements need to be very precise, the movements need to be very focused, the movements need to reflect your movement limitations and your movement strengths, but as much as anything, your movement weaknesses. We need to train is training for purpose. Look, if you're going to train for CrossFit, train for CrossFit. If you're training for powerlifting, train for powerlifting. But it's like people training for marathons. I'll just use that example. You don't just go run a marathon every day to train for a marathon. There's a specific progression of gates that you pass through, or benchmarks that you pass through before you actually run that marathon. The day of the marathon, you may have never run that 26 miles. You may only have run 13 miles to build up to it. But that's part of what we're focusing on, is one, not overtraining people. Two, not just focused on volume for volume. We're really focused on that laser focus and scalpel fit for purpose training that's specific to the sport.
And to kind of go off that, it's the relationship when it comes to training with an athlete, it shouldn't be like, it's not a dictatorship, it's a collaboration, right? And I think...
Say that one more time, Drew, because...
Sorry.
No, say that
no,
one...
it's not a dictatorship, it's a collaboration. And I think so many athletes think like, if this, then that. Well, maybe not, right? There's so many times that I have to have one of the athletes, they'll do a video walkthrough of their gym, right? Of like, what do they have accessible to them? There's some gyms that have every piece of equipment known to man. Sure. Is that easier to write a program for? Absolutely. But that's not the majority of the athlete, right? So being able to work with that athlete, meet the athlete where they are is something that's super important. And I don't know, there's a lot of content out there, in my opinion, that's just like, if you want this, then you do this. And I firmly disagree with that. I think there's a lot of context that goes into that. There's not a magical movement that works for every single girl or guy within development of whatever you're trying to develop. Like, it's very individualized. And I think sometimes athletes, when they get a little confused when I kind of lead with that, because I'm like, well, maybe this movement doesn't work for you, and that's okay. It's our job to now come up with a solution for this movement for you. Or they'll come out and see us in person, we'll train, say it's a glute focus squat variation, and they get it when they're in person, right? It's a movement that a lot of girls struggle with executing, on their own. Well, that's okay. There's only so much we can do remote, where then we have to find a substitution for them, and that's okay. So I just think that that's something that's needs to be addressed within athletes, and feel the need to speak up, right? I think sometimes the girls are so like, oh, I don't want to bother you, Drew. I don't want to bother you, Jamie. How many times do we hear that, right?
All the time.
And I'm like,
yep.
You're not bothering. Like
well, we don't know what you need help with unless you tell us.
Exactly.
And we know that the athletes who progress the best are the ones who give you feedback. Hey, this hurts my back. Hey, this hurts my knee, whatever. Maybe there's an old injury overlay. Maybe there's a movement pattern that we're just not able to address right now. But there are always, when you're communicating back and forth, that's when we get the most out of our athletes. It's the athletes who just put their head down and do it, which I love that workman-like attitude, but if you're not collaborating with your coach and you're not telling them what works, what doesn't, and that's not just from an exercise point of view, it's from a diet point of view or nutrition point of view, it's from a supplementation point of view, it's from a sleep, digestion, all those things, all those primary factors that we talk about, you've got to communicate what's working and what's not. We love experimentation. Experiment. We want that. And then give the feedback. But any experiment without feedback is just like apple pie without the apples. You're just giving me the crust. I need to know what the filling is so we can figure out what the best way is for you.
And educating them, right? So like and it's something I enjoy is educating the athletes on the why, breaking down biomechanics, drawing out levers and muscle actions and line of forces and things like that. There's a lot of information available. I'm not going to say it's misinformation or not. There's just a lot of information, and there's a lot of it depends, right? We say that all the time is it depends. So just explaining the what, the why, the mechanism, and I think that helps the girls so much. And when they do come out in person and I'm able to really show them, like, whether it's drawing the mechanical movement or, bracing them and putting them through a proper plane of motion, it works so much better than just, but the athletes, like you said, about just putting their head down and working, sure, that's great. But if we're not working effectively, then is it, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about too, I know that, and wanted to mention this because I know we've talked a lot about what we're doing, but what we're doing is ultimately resulting in the training that you're doing with our coaches. So then when athletes come on the team, the cool thing is they get the benefit of all of this, and this being able to analyze their athletes and everything else. But the other thing I wanted to talk with you about too is that I know sometimes people want variety because they're, the thing that drives me crazy when I want a new workout program because I'm bored. Okay. Talk about that. Like,
yeah, no, for sure, right. And this
the reason we're all reacting is because this is very, very common. This is a common.
It's very common, right? And then like on one argument, it's like if they need the variety to show up to get the session done, then is that better than having it? I don't know, right? At the end of the day, we know that within a movement pattern and specifically a fresh training block, the first 4 to 6 weeks is neuromuscular adaptation, right? So we're not actually getting stronger within that movement. We are learning how to be more efficient through that movement. So any progression we're seeing, I don't consider that to be true strength gains, okay? So, we got through the first 4 to 6 weeks. Well, that same athlete is going to probably want a new plan done within the first 4 to 6 weeks. I'll talk about Adair, for example. Like Adair was somebody, I use the crate mode version.
You're going to have to explain crate mode now.
Crate mode is, I firmly believe that any athlete is only one, off-season crate mode away from an Olympia qualification. And what that would be is they sleep in the crate, wake them up, pull them out, get their steps in, put them back in the crate, pull them out of the crate, feed them pre-workout, put them back in the crate, let them digest, pull them out of the crate, take them to go train, right? You get the idea. So, but Adair, get her first Olympic.
And by the way, we don't do that literally, if anybody's listening, okay?
It's an analogy.
I tried it with Jordan, it didn't work.
It's a mindset thing,
yes,
okay? Yes. Because we couldn't find crates big enough for people, but beyond that, okay.
Yeah, so anyways, Adair is a prime example. She only had one revision between her update last fall and getting her Olympia qualification. And the only revision was a modulation of volume. Her exercise selection stayed the same. So she went.
She put if you haven't seen, go to see Adair Lebrecht on Instagram and look at her transformation from last year to this year. Right?
Yeah, and it's insane, right? And it just goes to show you, like, when you learn how to properly move,
the benefit
you're going to get. That's true progressive overload, right? I think a lot of athletes hit the 4 to 6 week mark, right? They feel the overload, the logbook's going up, and the logbook then plateaus. Well, yeah, because the neuromuscular adaptation, that phase is over. Now come the tough gains, right? And if we just keep changing like, we're never actually overloading, never actually getting stronger and more efficient within that movement. So she's just a great example of an athlete that has gone crate mode and just not asked for updates and things like that, and just worked, sent training footage week after week after week. When we met for the women's seminar in January, February, whenever that was, earlier this year, funny story, I was struggling with one of her dysfunctions within her adductor issue, and she stayed with us in Florida, and my general manager, Javi, of our gym I own in Florida, I was like, Javi, I'm stuck. I cannot figure out what's going on with her physique. Called him in super early, felt so bad. It was like a 6 a.m. I had him come in and do an additional eval on Adair. And boom, like 30 minutes later, he kind of, helped me walk through what was going on. But it's just, the whole changing just to change is I think we've got to get away from that and understand that if you really want to be successful within the bikini division, or really changing your physique, you've got to be able to
bodybuilding in general.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to be able to figure out how to find joy in true progressive overload of a movement, not just changing the block to make it fun,
or to make a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
And if somebody's, and we talk about this a lot, if somebody's lifestyle and they're a brand new competitor and they're just kind of like bucket listing and they want to do it for fun. But we're talking about, like, as if you're one of those people that are like, I want to turn pro, I want to be a successful pro, then that's when, the details matter, and it starts to become like, what's the best movement for this person to accomplish what we're accomplishing. And the other thing too, we talk a lot about, like, when somebody's brand new, they just need to put muscle on everywhere.
Right,
Any kind of activity is going to help. But then we get to this level, and we see this every weekend when we're at shows. Somebody's got a little bit too much upper body for the lower body, or, maybe the glutes are a little overpowering. So it's not just to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. It's got to be so specific.
Well, and I think that's where some of the social content comes in. It makes it tough to coach sometimes. Well, there's people out there that are great at building glutes. Well, for the most part, this is not just a glute judge sport, division, right? Yeah. It's not just about your glutes.
That's one piece.
That's one piece. And I think that's where the disconnect between some of these in-person trainers versus coaches that truly understand the division requirements, that gap has to be bridged. And a lot of times it does make it tough to get an athlete to understand. Like, it's not just about glutes, right? So that's
the other part that you've talked about, it's not just about glutes. It's also not about delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS. It's not. There are certain elements, and if we really want to broaden this discussion, it gets into that psychological aspect of training, and we talked about this a little bit before, or at least teased it, is transitioning athletes from going to the gym and going all beast mode, which they might like, and there's a certain level of satisfaction, endorphin release that comes with that, with being able to lift heavy and just go and just do that. But that's not training for purpose. And so there's a mindset shift that occurs, or that must occur, to get beyond that I pick things up, I put things down, and I'm going all beast mode, to knowing, okay, look, I'm now working, again, I'm just go back to that analogy, I'm working with a scalpel, and so I've got to be very precise in how I do this. The variability in workouts, there is a mental aspect to that. And varying the workouts can be something that an athlete may need mentally more than they do physically. But the physical part is that it's not more efficient. We're not getting to that progressive overload. So again, this is the larger discussion of meeting the athlete where they are, but also understanding what's the real science behind this, and what's producing the gains versus what's producing the mindset adjustment. Because they go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah, and I think intensity is something it's very hard to manage and teach. And I've got to get better at this. When I'm referring to intensity with athletes, I need to do a better job of educate them that intensity in my terminology is in proximity to failure, right? So like a superset, drop set, triple set, those, burnout sets, that is not intensity, right? That is volume, right? That's more like a metabolic stimulus. So when I refer to intensity, I'm referring to like a heavier load. I'm not a high volume guy. I prefer a lower volume approaches, which was an adjustment for a good bit of our girls, kind of once it started taking over some training. I had a lot of the girls like to train higher volume. They feel the burn. I feel the pump. I'm like, whatever. So we're just able to control fullness a little bit better with a lower volume, higher intensity based approach. We're able to not be as fatigued. But there's still that bridge, because a lot of girls think like intensity, heart rate. Oh, I went from lat pull down to dumbbell pull over to bicep curl to a burpee and my heart rate's through the roof. Well, that was intense. Well, that's something that I got to continue.
Right. Well, and when would be a time and place for a workout like that? So if we're trying to bring down...
high volume, caloric expenditure type stuff. And if we're going to lead into more metabolic stimulus, then we can go and add in some volume there on the tail end of the workouts. But true off seasons, when we're really trying to grow and stack on density, and not to go too deep, like when we look at sarcoplasmic hypertrophy versus myofibril and how when we build that density, we can get away with, prepping an athlete or keeping an athlete in prep longer, right? If they have that density and they're not just all sarcoplasmic swelling through, high sodium and high carb loads and pump, if you will, we can not only keep them in prep longer and sustain muscle, but they're also easier to peak because we don't have as many variables, whether it's like sodium and water and pump. And it's like, oh, now the judges decided they're going to take a break in between Class C and Class D bikini at the national show. And I'm like, oh, well, are they going to go super flat? Well, if they're all that bubbly sarcoplasmic, then they may go flat pretty quick, opposed to like some of that myofibril true density that we need lifting heavy.
Well, let's since you put those terms out there, let's go back a little bit.
Sorry.
No, don't. Sorry. I like that people should know that those are the two kinds of muscle growth. So sarcoplasmic, myofibrillar. So, define.
So we need sarcoplasmic in terms of like the swelling, if you will, or the pump that an athlete gets, right? And then the myofibril is going to be the actual density within the muscle. So you do need to have the sarcoplasmic to promote this the swelling, to promote myofibril long term. And I think that's where two athletes think they're bigger than they are when they're pumped, they're nice and full and bubbly, and then it's really hard to modulate water. Not that we have to modulate water often with our girls, but if you do modulate water with somebody that is more sarcoplasmic and more bubbly, if you will, you got to be very careful because they will go flat super fast.
I'm glad that you brought up that our athletes, because I've heard people say that before, like, some people say, oh, you shouldn't compete that often. You know what I mean? Like, FitBody athletes compete a lot more frequently, and we keep our athletes super healthy and able to compete more frequently. And I like that you brought that up because some of the techniques that we're utilizing are specifically to allow for that.
Yeah. And I think that's when we manage the girls' timelines so well, I feel. And that's why we have the most Olympia qualifications out of any team this year. I think that's a huge part of it. Our girls are getting their cycles, whether we like it or not during peak week, right?
Sometimes on show day.
On show days, right? Like it's one of those things. It's like, yay, my athlete's super healthy, but I understand great. How is this outcome going to go? So, but yeah, I think that's a huge aspect. And the protocols that we deploy are very safe, and the proof is in the pudding with how healthy our athletes are and able to continue to compete. And then from there, win shows and turn pro. I think something also that you're very, very good at is not only turning people pro, throwing them into pro shows right away, getting that feedback, and then a lot of our girls are competitive out the gate. I think of Miss Koa, who is a master's athlete that
over 40,
turns pro, throw her in Chicago pro. She's in the first call out of Chicago pro in her pro debut, right?
In the open.
In the open. Yeah. No, I'm not even talking in masters. I'm talking in the open, right?
Yeah.
So that's, super healthy and able to continue to compete.
Yeah. And I think that's like kind of where we got to get away from the all or none sort of thing, and I think a lot of that gets thrown out in the industry. Oh, you should never do this. You should always do this. And that just doesn't exist. And each athlete is individual. And there is a time, that we do need to shut it down. The body might start getting tired. Maybe things are going on in their lives and they need a break. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to stop a season. And, at the same time, our job is to make sure that we're creating as much longevity and keeping them as healthy and in a good space. So I love that. And I do think one other thing, and I know you mentioned this earlier, is, that we do, really focus on making sure we're keeping rosters reasonable and that we're spending more time developing our coaches so that every athlete on our team can have an amazing experience versus us getting overwhelmed with too many athletes and then everyone starts to pay the price. And I've experienced it personally, and I see this too often in the industry where, someone will come to me and they'll have a not so great experience with the coach that I know is a good, knowledgeable coach, and it just might be at that point like they've allowed things to get a little bit, and I want to say that just from a teaching standpoint, because when people are looking for a coach, and I know sometimes somebody will send an application and I'll be like, hey, my roster's full and I'm doing this for you too. Like, I don't want to bring you on and then you not get a good experience. So, we do spend a lot of our time, all three of us, working with our coaches and helping to create the best coaches in the industry. And I love that, we're not trying to hide or hoard knowledge. Like, we're sharing, even out externally, coaches outside of FitBody.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, and we have great coaches on our team, and one of our calls coming up, Ann Lemus is working on a PCOS insulin sensitivity thing and lecture that she's going to be presenting. And it's not just me and you doing education, right? And I think that's
Cam's working on some gut stuff
for gut health, and we've done stuff with
and Aaron's going to be on the show in a few weeks. So
yeah.
So, and I think that's a huge. It goes back to the dictatorship versus collaboration, comment I made earlier. Like, it's not Jamie won the pro show this weekend. It's we won the pro show. And I think that there's a lot of egos in this sport. There's no egos on this team. And that's goes back to my check-in word, being honored, to be a part of such a great organization with people that care from across the board, from admin to our coaches and promoters that understand who we are and what we stand for. And I think that's just amazing.
And you and I have talked about this, Drew. You had a prior career as a race car driver, and you're also a poker player. And I would probably, I don't know if it's overstating, but you're probably pretty damn close to being a world-class poker player. So those are individual endeavors. And we've talked about this a lot, that individual accomplishments are great and they make you feel amazing, but there's nothing quite like the accomplishment that you feel when you've done things as a part of a team. And it's that joy that really fuels all of us, is that we want to do this. And in my corporate life, I was very much involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And if there's one thing I can draw from that we embody here, is that diverse perspectives produce the best results. And we are coming at this from different perspectives that are markedly diverse in a lot of ways, both in our backgrounds, both in our delivery, in our thought processes. And it's not that there's I said this to an athlete this weekend, there's definite wrong ways. There are very few absolutes that you would consider the right way, but between those is your way. And your way is going to be something that's specific to you, that you will. The best plan, if not executed, is just a plan. If you can execute that plan, then it becomes something that produces the results that we all want and gets you to your goals. And that's our objective.
I mean, if I was going to give anybody advice, is like, look at, does your coach or trainer or whoever you're working with, like, check their ego at the door, and like, are they constantly learning and growing? Are they kind of stuck in thinking that they kind of have all the knowledge? And because I do think that that's what allows us all to grow as coaches, as a team, but also as an industry, like within the, I think a lot of what all three of us want to do is keep propelling the bodybuilding industry forward, whether it be with us or elsewhere. So I think looking for those people that collaborate, helps you to kind of find somebody who's going to help you keep growing.
Absolutely. And I that's my whole, each season I have a motto or a mantra that I'm really trying to enforce. And for me, it's the true novice experience this year, kind of leading in a little bit. It's like, I think as a whole within the entire organization, coaches, promoters, league, everything like that, we've got to just remember, think about the true novice experience. It needs to be fun. It needs to be, we need to retain these customers and athletes into the sport. And if we're putting them down as coaches, or from a promoter standpoint, if we're rushing them backstage, and like the girls are not just girls, but the true novice athletes are already in their head, like, oh my gosh, I'm backstage, what's going on? And there's so many times where you don't even have to be one of our athletes, but if I see a true novice athlete and they need help, I'm always going to help them, just because it's hectic. And I think that that's just something we should all be mindful of and continue to be mindful of, and just make it more fun, because
It should be fun.
That's the whole
yes
point.
and no. I mean, listen, let's be honest. Once you get to a certain level,
That's when it becomes more. You're a professional athlete at that point. So fun should still be a factor. It just may not be
Not every day. Nothing's fun every day.
That's true.
not at all.
But on show day, especially for that true novice athlete, I mean, fun should, the work, and I'd say this for all NPC athletes as well, is that, man, you got to have some fun on that day, because the work's done. And if you're so wired tight on that day that you can't perform on stage, or that your cortisol levels are rising because you're overthinking stuff and you're stressed and you're in your head, it's not going to be a good experience on stage, and it's not going to be a good experience for you physically. And you're cutting down your own self in terms of making the sport what it can be for you.
Absolutely. I mean, it's changed Jordan and I's life completely. Never would have thought we'd be doing this.
Well, you guys have changed the industry though too, Drew. So it's a give and take thing. Yes, it has changed your lives, but you guys are also helping to shape the industry, and that's an influence factor in, that we could get into the science of that, of the 3% or the law of diffusion of innovation, which is really kind of what this is when you get to a certain buy-in at 15% is that tipping point. And that's what we're working on, is really to get to that tipping point where we're shaping the industry as well. We good for checkout word?
Yes,
okay,
this has been awesome. Thank you for this conversation.
And this is part one of, we're going to do another conversation.
Yeah, we're going to do another
Drew,
conversation.
Checkout word. Excited.
All right. Man, I like that.
Excited.
I like that. So I think this wraps up this particular episode. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, leave your comments and your questions. We got some great feedback about doing an episode for active duty military and how to manage that. And we're working on brainstorming that. We also got a question today, and I don't remember what it was.
It was doing an episode on when is it time to stop competing and lifestyle. So we'll
Those are
both on the list.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we're giving you guys the fact that we are reading this stuff and we do want it. So I'm not just telling you to like, comment, subscribe for the algorithm. That doesn't hurt. But really, we want to shape the content so that we're delivering to you what you want to see. And Drew, thank you for being with us. My love, thank you for being with me. I don't know why, but I'll just keep thanking my Lord every day that you are. And I'll remember the 3 B's: be good to yourself,
be good to each other,
and be safe. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBodyFusion.